6 o'clock. We should get this show on the road.
There we go. Thanks for keeping me honest, Sam. It is indeed 6 o'clock. I call a meeting to order. Let me share my screen. So the first order of business is to go through the preliminary motions. Let's start reading from here. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, this committee needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. First, because each member of the committee is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each committee member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. I'm going to conduct a roll call using the minutes from last meeting as a reference. Let's see here. Lisa Sales. Come back to Lisa. Jimmy Bierman.
Jimmy Bierman, participating from McLean, Virginia. Thank you.
Richard Chu.
Richard Chu, representing Hunter Mill from Reston.
Gary Highland. Gary and Lisa are probably signing in together, so I'll come back. Denver Supinger. Denver, we see your icon. See it glowing, but I don't hear anything. Denver will. Now you're muted. Denver will come. Yeah, you're unmuted, and I can see your icon glowing like you're talking, but we can't hear anything. That's got to be a Teams issue. Just for the purposes of the record, we acknowledge that you are here, and then we'll see if you can get your voice on in a second. Saif Rahman. I don't see Saif on the participant list. I guess we're going to mark him absent. George Becerra. Don't see George. Bill Bowie.
Bill Bowie, participating from my residence in the Hunter Mill district.
Sam Walker.
Yeah, this is. I just muted myself. This is Sam. I'm representing Sully District, and I'm communicating from Centerville.
Alice Wang.
I'm here calling in from Falls Church, Virginia.
Candace Butler.
Here calling from Annandale, Virginia.
Tim Thompson.
Tim Thompson, representing the Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Association.
Scott Price.
I'm here calling from Richmond, Virginia.
Brian Garner.
Brian Garner's president, here from my home in Alexandria, Virginia.
Ray Marin.
Ray Marin here in Fairfax.
Janae Lindner.
At my home in Fairfax, representing Springfield District.
Prashant Rajan.
Prashant Rajan, representing Braddock District, calling from my home in Fairfax.
Greta Perkins.
Coretta Perkins here from my home in Vienna, Virginia.
And going back, Lisa Sales. Let's go to George Becerra.
George Becerra, Burt.
Thank you, George. Lisa and Jerry, are you calling in together again? See a hand raised. Nat, is that them?
Yeah, I'll unmute them. A call-in user ending in 0610. You do have access to your mic. If you wouldn't mind stating your first and last name, please.
Hi there. Through my laptop, so you guys can hear me now.
It sounds like Denver. Denver, you cut out for a second. Is that you?
Well, yes, yeah, Denver Stephenger calling in from Fairfax, Virginia. I apologize for not being able to dial in on my computer, but I am here.
Yeah, it's got to be a Teams thing because I could see your icon moving, but we couldn't hear you. Thank you, Denver. Okay,
Thank you.
trying one more time for Lisa and Jerry. Participants, just double checking the participants list. Okay, I do not see them, so I'm going to mark them both absent. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chairman Walker so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that the Redistricting Advisory Committee certify for the record that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this committee.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Is there any discussion? All right, we have a motion and it's been second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no or nay. Okay, are there any abstentions? Great, moved and passed.
Thank you, Sam. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the committee certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the committee to physically assemble and unsafe for applicants, staff, and the public to physically attend any such meeting in person, and that as such, an in-person meeting cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the committee conduct this meeting electronically through Microsoft Teams and that the public may access this meeting by joining it through the provided link. It is so moved.
Seconded.
Heard a second from Tim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Finally, I move that the committee certify that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda provide for the committee's continuity of operation or the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Second.
Second from Richard. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I do see Lisa and Jerry in here. Going to divert for a second. Lisa, Jerry, can you please unmute and tell us where you're calling in from?
Okay. Hi, can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Great. We are here in Mount Vernon District, both Jerry Highland,
Yes,
Mr. Highland,
here in Mount Vernon. Thank you.
and Lisa Sales. Thank you. Sorry we're late.
Thank you for joining. Okay, so just a quick note on, not on our calendar, but for the final meeting, I did get clarity. We can meet virtually, so no potluck at the last meeting. And we will be able to take an official vote on the report as soon as we're done collectively discussing, examining, etc. So we'll be doing this preliminary motion thing for the remainder of our meetings. Okay, moving through the agenda. We need to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Second. Or I move we approve the agenda.
Motion to approve. And then
There we go. We got Tim and Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next, we're going to approve minutes from meeting 18, which I have here. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman. This is Jerry.
I'm sorry, sir, was that a motion to approve?
Yes, I move, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there a second?
Lisa seconds.
Any discussion or amendments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes as, the draft minutes as they were submitted by the secretary, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Next, we're moving into public comments. Thank you to our guests, as usual, for joining us tonight. I think I see a few people joining. If you'd like to raise a point, speak to the committee, address a topic, please raise your hand. Let's Lynn Hooper, please unmute yourself and welcome tonight.
I went in and looked at the, tried to find the documents that we talked about last week, and not being totally able to figure these things out, I couldn't find it. What is the best? Should I just send you an email and you can send it
Sure.
back to me? Would that be the easiest way?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Okay, because the Mount Vernon Democratic Committees asked me to represent them as a member of that committee with what you're doing, so I need to get the information to them.
Happy to do so. So I'm going to give you two emails. The first one's mine, and then the second one will be the redistricting email.
Okay.
And let me know when you have a pen and paper handy.
Okay, have it.
So it's my first initial and last name, Papa, Bravo, Echo, Romeo, Romeo, Yankee, at, and this one's a little bit long.
Okay.
Charlie, Charlie, Bravo, Echo, Lima, Lima, Echo, Romeo, Oscar, Sierra, Echo, CC Belrose.
Okay. .com. I'm so glad I'm an Army spouse. I know sometimes.
There you go.
I actually knew those. And the other one?
The other is redistricting at fairfaxcounty.gov.
Fairfax County spelled out. Okay. Okay, I will be sending that to you probably tomorrow then. Thank you. The one that you did last week is published, correct?
It is. There's been substantial work between last Tuesday and tonight, so I'm going to send an updated. The most recent one will also be published on the web probably sometime tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's only seen one other guest in the participant list. If there isn't anybody else, then I'm going to close out the public comment. And we're going to move to the full committee discussion. I jumped ahead of myself, so the last meeting will be virtual. I think we can decide on a date now. Let's just go ahead. I'm going to pull up the calendar. So we are 2 weeks away from our original deadline. I think that per our usual practice, we can skip the Thursday meeting this week and use that time to individually examine the report edits that we're going to discuss tonight and that have been circulating over the weekend, or that I sent the email out yesterday. And then next Tuesday, the 22nd, or next Thursday, depending on how everyone feels, we'll have our final meeting and approve the report. So what do we think? Next Tuesday, 22nd, 24th? Do we need to go all the way to the 1st?
Janae here. I would suggest that you go ahead and do the 22nd, and then that way, if we need another one on the 24th, we can do it.
That makes sense to me.
Okay?
I agree with
That's
that too, Lisa. Anything but Thursdays.
I'm good with the 22nd as well. This is Alice.
I'll also accept, alternatives if we had them, but I don't think we need to do that. So it sounds like everyone's in agreement on the 22nd. We'll advertise it as our final meeting, possibly meeting the 24th. So I think Brian and Nat go ahead and move forward with those dates. Okay, so thank you everyone who has sent. Just going to close this and bring this up. So what we're looking at here on the shared screen, if you can't see this, please let me know. I know that some folks have had Microsoft Teams issues. So what you're looking at here is the most recent draft report. I've incorporated several different versions, and the only one that I missed was Janae's. So I'm going to pull up actually a little bit more content right now when we get to the Springfield part. Thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy, I was thinking, since just because it comes in order first, there haven't been any changes here to Lee and Sully, so I was going to bypass that. But Jimmy, since you sent over some new material for Mount Vernon and Mason, if you want, you don't have to, but do you want to walk us through what you have?
Sure, I'll walk us through quickly. What I did is I basically took the material that we already had, and I tried to put it more into a narrative form that was a little bit more user-friendly than simply cutting and pasting from that previous PowerPoint. I already spot that I need a period after Alice Wang under the subcommittee members, but the point being, I just wanted to lay out again Mount Vernon, Mason, and then if you scroll down, you'll get to the context and analysis that the subcommittee made, analysis and outcome, talking about things that were emphasized. And it's honestly, it's not that complicated. It's not nearly as long or as detailed as the current draft of Springfield, for instance, but I think it more or less does the trick. As I said last time, I'm willing to add more to it, obviously, but that's just the draft that we have right now. So thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Does anyone have any questions on Mount Vernon and Mason? Ray, yeah, go ahead.
Well, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I was not part of the RAC in the first iteration. And so maybe some of what I'm going to say is just a reflection of my ignorance of things that went on there that I'm not aware of. But in looking at the recommendation, the way it's phrased, see if I can turn to it here quickly. There's a recommendation regarding excuse me. It says the RAC unanimously recommends that the Board of Supervisors neither consider renaming Mount Vernon nor Mason. And I guess I'm a little bit confused. I thought we were going to be making positive recommendations for considering areas to be renamed, not making negative recommendations about areas not to be renamed. Or is my confusion justified, or
No,
is it my ignorance?
I think that our plan was to do either. I think there is flexibility on that. Like the way that Jimmy phrased it here makes sense to me. The conclusion was we don't want to do anything from the subgroup. That's the elevator, the 30-second conclusion that I gathered from that. And I think this recommendation reflects what the subgroup is, what they discussed in context.
I'm open to changing it if others want it changed. I'd say the RAC unanimously concludes that it will not recommend the renaming of Mount Vernon or Mason.
Well, as the
Something
chair of
like
the
that.
subcommittee, I would think we leave it just the way it is. I think it's perfect.
Okay, that's fine too. I was just saying either way, there are two ways of putting it, but yes, the way that I put it initially, like I just don't think that we're recommending that it change.
I'd prefer that.
I think it's good how it reads too, because we are making recommendations, and if you introduce the word concludes, that I don't think that's a strong. So, I mean, I think that's great the way that it was originally written. Great, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess then my confusion probably arises from the fact that possibly, I don't know where these all these recommendations originated, but I gather some of them were probably discussed in the previous iteration of the RAC, and that's how those two districts got to be on the list rather than through the exercise that we went through proposing them in phase two.
Our goal here was always to include recommendations in the report, and I think in the first meeting, which I'm not certain if you were at, we defined our scope as being we are an advisory body that will make recommendations, and that's it. We won't be forcing any changes or undertaking any surveys that decide on a new name or something like that. So this is consistent with our work from the first phase in that sense, because we were making recommendations about what the Board of Supervisors should do with the outcomes of the maps. Here, I think we're just a little bit more targeted and specific, because we're discussing, well, here it's Mount Vernon and Mason, and then in other sections, we're making direct recommendations about what to do or not do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Sam, go ahead.
Paul, you basically took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think I have anything else to say. The point I was going to make is that we talk about our methodology, how we came up with the names. We talk about that in there, and we also show the name Mount Vernon and others. So I think we need to say why it disappeared, or why, again, you said what I needed to say. I'm gonna shut up now.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Candy?
I was wondering, just in terms for clarity, if each of the sections about the work of the work groups should include at the top the criteria, say, the criteria for each entity, the reason we are evaluating them, and so that, because we've got two audiences, we've got the Board of Supervisors, but we also have the public. And it just, up front of the report, we list the criteria, then we list the work groups and the entities that are being evaluated. But it just would seem to me that rather than have people go back and forth and try to figure out why each of the entities is being, how it was evaluated, it would be helpful just to have it at the beginning of each of the sections. But just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah,
Paul, I don't think that's necessary, because it's the first sentence of background and context. Mount Vernon and Mason were placed on an overbroad, as inclusive as possible list of potential districts for consideration to be due to the association of both names with the institution of slavery. So I don't think it's necessary to repeat the stuff from the beginning, because in the background and context, we already say why they were even placed on the list. I also would like to note that with respect to Mount Vernon and Mason, you know, we were very clear many times, despite the fact we've gotten loads and loads of hate mail for it. We were very clear many times that we were being sort of as over-inclusive as possible to even consider it. And then very quickly, we decided that there was not a reason to change the names. So I don't think we need to. I think we've already got it in the background and context. I don't think we need to change it.
Jimmy, would putting it in the executive summary, like why each one, would that be clarified? Do you think that'd be helpful? I tend to think that'd be a little helpful.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that would work. Yeah.
We included it because of this criteria, because the criteria is what page? Yeah, it's here.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, it says Ray.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I think that would be a good place to put it right after the candidate selection criteria. And I would suggest something like, based on these criteria, the committee, after some discussion, developed the following list of districts and precincts to consider as candidates to recommend for possible renaming. Then you have a little table with the respective names, and on the right column, you just list the relevant criteria for each decision. And anybody can quickly at a glance see why something got on the list.
Ray, I totally like that idea.
This is Richard and I agree.
This is Janae.
Okay, I'll insert that later. Okay, so we're still on Mount Vernon Mason. Okay. Brian, so before we get to Springfield, I want to do the stuff we mostly worked on first, just to kind of stick a fork in it. I think Mount Vernon Mason is ready to, we're almost ready to completely finish that one. Brian, is there anything else that you wanted to say, or Sam, since you added in a part down here on the updates up here, or your most recent version, rather?
I didn't have anything to add.
Okay. Per the straw poll, I think it would be helpful to add in a recommendation. Is that something that, can you word a recommendation, or could we just, I mean, I think it'd be fine to just use Jimmy's language from Mount Vernon and Mason and say the same thing for Lee and Sully, but the reverse.
No, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Then I will just give myself a note here. There's some consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, Sam, I blew past your inclusion. Is there anything you wanted to say here?
No, I don't have anything in addition to say.
I did have a question. I took this to mean that you were putting your opinion in here, which I'm trying to avoid on a report like this. Was this your opinion, or is this based on fact?
It was an opinion of the writer of the document, Unsully.org, and that's why I labeled it as that. And it could be removed. It's not my opinion, but
okay,
that's how I was.
There's I'm going to delete it if you think about it and you do want to include it as a quote and then attribute it to that. I mean that's fine. That's what this document's for. Just want to, I want to be clear that I'm not deleting stuff just because it's someone's opinion. Opinions do belong in here, but properly cited. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of that, let me pull up Janae's stuff and we'll do this side by side. I admit that I have not had a chance to look at it, which is fine because Janae can walk us through it. Yeah, sorry, Janae, you're on mute. I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Can I talk about Sully for 1 second?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay, sorry. I had that report that was sent out to everybody that the person at Sully actually went through all the people that owned it. Did you receive that by chance?
I can search in my email here and bring it up if that's helpful. Probably, it is very possible that I missed an email or multiple emails.
Yeah, because it was interesting in that she just physically went down who all the owners were.
Okay, is it RAC, short description of the Sully estate?
Yeah.
Okay, I see a PDF and a Word. I'll just download. Let me take this over here. Downloads.
I'm just saying because you have the information,
Yeah. So, I mean, this is very informative. Are you saying that we should include some of this information in the section?
Well, I think so. As you know, I am not 100% for the Sully name change because of the Quakers that owned it. That was that one generation, but then thereafter it was, which is kind of extraordinary considering it was before the Civil War. And so I think it's worthwhile to put in there.
I mean, I think that
but again, I was not in the discussion because I was running the Springfield discussion.
Yeah, so if there's something that you think we should consider, we definitely got to bring that up here and discuss it together. I think you'd have to author that first and then share it, and then maybe we consider next week. Okay. Does that make sense? Like, I also was not in the Lee and Sully discussion, but if there's something that you think is germane that we should include, even if it's to point out an alternative viewpoint, then that's something for us all to decide on because we're all voting on this report. So
okay, it's just it's just some additional material since we have.
I'm just time is a resource for all of us. I don't have time to go through this. I mean Brian has access to it, and I'm sure he'll read it, and if he thinks he should add it his section, he'll do that. But
Brian, are you interested in going through it? Brian?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry, I was muted, but yes, I'm interested in going through it. I will go through it.
Okay.
I went through that.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Okay, so moving into Springfield. So I did some research over the weekend and work on this, and so did Janae. Let me try to bring up what she just circulated so everyone can see it. Let's see.
Hey, Paul, for those of us who weren't able to attend the town hall, can you give a little recap of what happened at the town hall?
Sure. Janae, sidekick here with me since you were there, and Ray and Denver and Tim were also there. So there's a YouTube video if anybody wants to watch that as well. I thought it was a nice discussion for the most part. There's still a lot of misunderstanding about us getting paid for our work and county resources being diverted from essential activities to do this. I'm going to talk offline with Brian from Office of Public Affairs and maybe even the chair's office because there's still
Hi, it's Lisa. I just wanted to add that I also had a discussion with Rodney Lusk, Supervisor Lusk, and his chief of staff at the Mount Vernon Town Hall last weekend to let them know that that was an issue, that messaging, that we are an all volunteer, all citizen committee, and that they might want to message that to head off any sort of criticism about taxpayer dollars being unwisely spent. So I just wanted to share that while you're on the topic.
No, that's great. It's a struggle. I mean, not everybody is going to see the messaging. Just that's a fact of life. But many, I don't want to say most, but many of the people who gave testimony at the town hall, there was a taxpayer issue that they think are being paid, and there's resources being spent on this. But separate from that, the question of why are we addressing this when there's so many other, like, why are county staff, thinking we're staff, investing their time and their professional time into this when there are other issues that are more important? And I think that's a legitimate question because we're still in a pandemic, et cetera. But I think once you took that off the table, the town hall focused on two things that I introduced this into the let's see, into the writing today as an edit after I sent it around. Let's see. Yeah, here. The testimony by these residents largely reflected that which has been received over the county email account dedicated to the renaming issue. Community identity is important, and identifying where one lives is important. So what I mean by that is that those who were saying we shouldn't change the name, say their stance is, well, I identify with this part of the community. I know everyone who's friends and family who's in my network identifies Springfield as my community. So let's keep the name. And then those that advocated for change said that identifying where one lives and reducing confusion is an added plus in their everyday life. So again, like that was one summary, that content, and then the rest was don't change the name because we think we're wasting taxpayer money and time on this. So I'll stop there. Janae, everyone else, if you want to add to that, please.
And I think too, there weren't a lot of people there. He actually ended early. He's able to go through everybody. And but I agree with you. It was interesting. Also, some people took it as an opportunity to talk about other things, and that was interesting to watch that. And so when you only have a handful of people there, there wasn't a real good pulse on what was gotten on for Springfield. I think the big thing is the office has literally not received one registered complaint for the name. So, and it certainly was reflected in the group. Certainly there were some that wanted to change it, but handful.
Yeah, so Candy and I and Tim and I discussed that independently. We're trying to get a head count. It was either eight to 8, as I put in there, or it was Candy. What were your numbers again?
I actually took notes. I was there. I attended the whole meeting, and I did get 16 speakers.
Right.
But my notes say that there were 12 against, 2 for, and 2 uncertain. So yeah. I don't know why the numbers are so different, but
I was surprised that there wasn't an overwhelming, that all 16 weren't against renaming. There were some individuals who said I live in Springfield and I'm against renaming, but that wasn't the only. It certainly wasn't the only. Yeah, sorry, Tim, I see your hand up.
Yes. To Janine's point just a second ago, Pat Harry talked about it when he presented to the committee prior to the town hall of all kinds of numerous people contacting the district office and don't change the name. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. But not once did he say that, nor mention any numbers at the town hall. That's my only point. And if it's so important, he should have at least identified it.
Well, I do know at the beginning, he did say that there had not been one registered, well, maybe I need to watch it again, but seems like he did bring that up, that there had not been one registered person against change for in favor of changing the name. Can you give me those numbers again that you took?
I had 8 and 8.
Oh, I had.
What did you have?
I had 12 against and 2 for, so.
Yeah.
This is Ray. You know, I didn't take account, but my impression just from listening to everybody was that the overwhelming sentiment was against renaming, and certainly, and certainly the level of passion exhibited by the ones against was many degrees beyond what the ones favoring renaming expressed. But I also was struck by something that I'm not sure I understood. There was some discussion about whether Springfield ended up on the list for some political considerations, whatever that means. I know it was referred to by Frank Anderson, who's a staff member of Supervisor, what's his name, in another district.
Walkinshaw.
Walkinshaw, yes.
Walkinshaw.
Right, and Mr. Harity also referred to it in some of his remarks, a political component, and I was surprised at that because I hadn't heard that before, and I'm just wondering what it was all about. Another thing that struck me was the assumption of a lot of the speakers that if the name were changed, there would be a cascade of consequential renamings of lots of places and things. And just looking at the most recent draft report that you submitted, Mr. Chairman, apparently that, you know, apart from a couple maybe signs at the government office buildings in the district, there really shouldn't be any consequential renamings. So the issue about this having, you know, extensive economic consequences on businesses and so on is probably a non-issue as I see it. So if anybody else has a different view, I'd like to hear it.
I have something to add, but Jimmy has his hand up. Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't know what the whole this is just some political thing is about, other than that it's total BS. During the previous iteration of the RAC, we were talking about various districts, and actually a lot of it had to do with the fact, I think, that there was a proposal to have 10 districts rather than 9 districts, which got us talking about location and place, and the fact that the community, the town known as Springfield, is not wholly within the Springfield district. So some people were saying, well, you know, maybe it would be better if there were a name that was different, but that was not a political thing. I brought it up in an early meeting here, and I said maybe it would be something we considered because the town of Springfield wasn't in the Springfield district, but it wasn't a political thing. There's no retribution. That's all complete and utter BS. The fact that Supervisor Harity would characterize it that way is just BS. And I say this as someone who, by the way, having now been through this process, is going to vote to say we shouldn't recommend that we change the name of Springfield, because there's very limited view out there that it should be changed, if you'd even call it much of a view at all. So, but it wasn't a political thing. It didn't start as a political thing. That's just not true. So I thought somebody should say that. Thanks.
There's more color around that. I know other people have their hands up, but there's more color around that from the dais, from the Board of Supervisors on the day Paul presented before the RAC, on behalf of the RAC. Supervisor Harity was very upset that our recommendations were taken to heart for above 9.
Candy, is your hand still up? You have number 1 in my list.
Yeah, I wanted to comment that it was, as I was listening to the speakers, it was more and more frustrating to hear that they really did not understand completely, which is, you know, some people were probably hearing about this for the first time, and they joined the town hall, you know, without any context. But thankfully, Janae had the opportunity at I guess, I don't know, Janae, about 3/4 of the way through the meeting.
Yeah.
To actually
read,
add some clarification by talking about the specific criterion, you know, and it was such a relief, Janae, to have you do that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think that was a big part of the issue is they didn't know why they were picked. They didn't understand. All they've heard is the Confederate name, and that's the thing that keeps floating around. Right. And once that was said, it was interesting when people afterwards started speaking, they would be corrected saying, we're not talking about it being a Confederate name. Do you know what I mean? And so they got on board. I think one thing with the political issue, there was one guy that said, oh, there was a leaked Democrat meeting that said that they were going to do all these things. Wilkinshaw's aide that was there, he certainly debunked it. Later, I asked Pat, I said, did he ever send it to you? And he says, nah. He says, I think he made it up. You know, I mean, it's like people can say things, but there's no proof. And so that, I think that's where that started, at least in our conversation, was this one older gentleman who started saying, well, there was this political meeting, you know, where we were going to get after Pat Harity. So
okay,
it died until we see the tape. It's not going anywhere. Not even in Pat Harity's office.
Okay, Tim, you have your hand up.
I do. The political stuff was made by Harity himself, and he was commenting or making side comment to a degree about the report that you gave from the original RAC prior to our getting together for this thing on the renaming, the original precincts moving around to create the districts. And he made a comment, right or wrong, but the comment, and he reiterated it once or twice afterwards, that he, as a supervisor, never saw your report or the report of the original RAC that was given and handed into the Board of Supervisors. And he made the comment that it was sort of a backroom deal between the chairman and yourself, reading your report or our report to the chairman, that really wasn't fully shared with the rest of the supervisors. And he thought that that was a political thing. And then he even made comment that this is probably going to be the same thing. It'll happen like that. It shouldn't, but it probably will, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how this political stuff was done.
Well,
that's correct. Better said than I did, Tim. Thank you.
I know everyone who was on the RAC Phase 1 is thinking in their head, that's bananas. So I will, I'll just leave it there. That's a good reminder that this report, anybody who's joining from the public, every single draft that we've discussed at these meetings has been published online, not in real time, but that's as close to real time as work for a board or commission at the local level gets. So I'm not sure how we could be more transparent, other than if we were, I don't know, all sharing a house and editing this together. But maybe for the next RAC. So right now, so Candy, Janae, I think your hands are still up from last time. Do you have anything else to say?
Nope. Sorry about that.
Just checking. So what I'm going to do right now is just walk through the research that I have, and then I'm going to pull up Janae's So this is all on Springfield. This is just a motivation part. We had members of the public during RAC Phase 1 indicate in written testimony that the name should be changed. And I'll let everyone, if you want to go find that as a reference, it's up on the web. So this is explaining what we did with that. It said during Phase 2, Springfield was added to the list of candidates based on criteria number 5. Is the name confusing to residents, or is it geographically representative of the district? So that's how it got on there for evaluation. This is about the town hall that we just discussed. I think that's, I can mostly skip this. This is an acknowledgement of what.
Are you going to leave that 8 and 8?
Tim and Candy need to. Tim, Candy, maybe can we work that out, and then I'll put X's here. I'll put little blanks. And then we can resolve this based on.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
I'm deputizing both of you to compare notes and talk to each other and figure out what the ratio was. Of the 16 people that spoke, was it 8 and 8? Was it 12, 2 and 2? And then we'll make that change here.
Tim, I can email you a list of the speakers and what or I can just scan my notes in and send them to you.
Wasn't it taped? Was it taped?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah.
So then we don't need to look at the notes. You just watch the tape.
Well, that's fine. It's not short.
Can you send me a copy of the notes too? It's Janae Lindner. Can you send me a copy of the notes too that you took? It's Janae Lindner.
Sure. Tim, do you have notes? Oh,
Tim.
This is Brian.
Go ahead.
We can look at the meeting minutes, though, because those are public record. We look at the meeting minutes and rely on that instead of everyone's notes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Are they available?
I'm not certain the meeting minutes were taken. I watched the tape today. I could go back. I said notes. Notes means find any, watch the YouTube video again.
Okay, that's fine.
Whatever you tell us.
Tim, I'll email you and then we can watch the video again and you let me know what you think.
Ultimately, I don't want to make this a huge point. This is 16 people that showed up to a town, and their voice individually, their voices are important, but it's also only 16 people. So, Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to say 12-4 or 9-7. I think those numbers are insignificant. I think it would be far more meaningful if someone just says, it appeared that the consensus was. And don't get into numbers, because then you're just asking somebody to say, wait a minute, I was there and it was only this and that.
Yeah, but Richard, if it was 8-8, there wasn't consensus.
Well, then all I'm saying is that the people were there should be able to put their heads together and say there was a consensus or there was not a consensus. And if there was not a consensus, it favored X or Y. And just leave it at that. No one's going to get into those weeds unless we provoke it.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
This is Jerry. We've had a lot of discussion on whether it was 8-8, 10-2. I just, having been a supervisor for a couple of years, I don't know why we're even considering the impact of 16 people on the subject of changing the name of a magisterial district. We have thousands of people in the Springfield district, and we're concerned about what 16 have said at this meeting. I mean, I just think we're dancing on the head of a pin. I mean, I kind of feel, so what in terms of what that vote was, because it's not representative of the Springfield district. It's not a consensus of the people who live there. So I just don't think we should spend an awful lot of time, just making very sure that vote was whatever. It's just, for me, it is not dispositive of the feeling of the people in the Springfield district.
I totally concur with you, Jerry. This is Bill.
This is Tim. I concur. However, I think what this is showing is it was not a slam dunk to keep the name the same as the chair or as the supervisor indicated to us publicly in his first contact with the RAC.
Understand.
So when he made the public comment.
Understand, Tim. I understand your point.
George has had his hand up for a while. George.
Yeah, I just want to make sure on the numbers, like Jerry said, as long as we're consistent across, that's all I've always said at the beginning. That's my food for thought.
Richard, your hand is still up, but I think that's...
It's a holdover.
Holdover. Okay. Janae, is your hand newly up? Okay, your hand's down. Okay. I think this, I'm going to reword this. So I do want to, I linked the YouTube here, and I think that'd be useful in the report. I think Jerry's right that we don't need to get into the weeds on the 8.8. So I will come up with some language. Janae, if you want to send me an example that we can work on together for this, and anybody else that's on the Springfield group. So I'm just going to go like that for now, and then note that we will replace it. Let's see. Footnote. Insert comments.
Yeah, we could just say it was there was a lightly attended Springfield Town Hall meeting.
Yeah, at which a diversity of views were expressed.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
It sounds like you were a diplomat.
Do we know how many people actually attended the meeting, Janae?
Well, 16, because they let them all speak.
No, 16 people wanted to speak, including people that were not part of the, they weren't constituents. There was 2 people that spoke that weren't even lived in the district, but they were then finally given because nobody else in the district wanted to speak. And those 2 at the end spoke, but they were not constituents of Pat Harity's from the Springfield district. But my question is, were there lots of other people sitting on the sideline? Myself, I attended. I didn't speak. It was not my position. I was there to listen. My point is, though, were there other people there that wanted just to listen like I did, but did not speak? That's all.
And see, the thing is I didn't have the purview. I couldn't see all that. So, for example, I didn't know you were there. So.
I was there on camera.
So it was in person and virtual?
No, it was all virtual.
Okay. Thank you.
But like right now, it shows pictures, but like if I click on my +15, nothing happens. So.
Yeah,
it may be
the county version.
I think it's fair to say that the meeting didn't have a huge audience. It was maybe 25. I mean, max 30. I didn't see the participant list, but there were only 16 speakers. So let's keep this moving because I want to make sure that we can cover both my and Janae's stuff. So I'm going to get rid of this and reword it. Try to describe and summarize a little bit more. This is important, I think, to note because this is something that we don't live in Springfield and we should change it. because geography, I think this summarizes it well. I'm trying to summarize what the members of the public said rather. So at the time of its creation, Springfield District did indeed encompass West Springfield, Springfield, and North Springfield. None of those remain in the district as with the new maps, although part of West Springfield is still just over, is that rolling? Can't remember what road it is. It's where West Springfield High School is, the post office, et cetera, is just over the district line.
Rolling Road.
Rolling Road, thank you. So in summary, the geography folks are saying Springfield District doesn't have any of Springfield anymore, except for a small portion of West Springfield. So with such a big district with Clifton and Occoquan, et cetera, why are we calling it Springfield? I tried to get into to not answer that, but to provide, well, this is how it was originally called Springfield. It was created in 1967, and it was named after the communities that it was going to serve. Upon a little bit more examination, elaboration, I found that there were some vague ties to slavery for Springfield. I'm not calling the owner, Henry Dangerfield, a Confederate or Confederate officer or anything like that, because there's a distinction with our criteria. But it does appear that on the Springfield farm, for which the district is named, at least in part, Springfield Farm is driving a lot of the reason why Springfield was named Springfield. The individual who owned it was a wealthy merchant who owned slaves. This is documented in a few different places. West Springfield High School itself has a webpage that I linked to here, where they talk about the large plantation owned by slaveholders that was located in the area. This is a description of how many slaves and when he owned them. And then from there, I move into, well, it was created in 1967. What were the original boundaries? We see that Springfield was originally encompassing, all the way up to the Alexandria border. North Springfield, Springfield, and West Springfield. This isn't a topographic map or an official map, but it does pretty clearly show that those components in the wider Springfield area were in Springfield District, so it made sense to call it that. The U.S. Census Bureau, the place designated Springfield by the U.S. Census Bureau is currently here. Then we see North Springfield and West Springfield. I go on to, this is familiar territory for everybody who was in RAC Phase 1. Over the redistricting process beginning in 1991, the same story that we saw with our current process, population growth in the eastern part of the county here was forcing the people doing the redistricting to reevaluate, well, we need to balance the populations out. It's too dense over here and not dense enough, or it's less dense over here in the western part. So we're going to be we need to move the district borders west in order to make sure that there's balance between the districts. So that I'm inferring, that wasn't an explicit finding, but based on the descriptions that I summarize in these paragraphs, the decision to move the Springfield borders from this to this, which clearly Alexander is here. We clearly see that the two new districts gobbled up the North Springfield and Springfield areas. Removing them from Springfield District was a result of population concern, not some kind of political or geographic. And I quote here, the 1990 census revealed that the population of Western Fairfax County had dramatically increased, which required the creation of a 9th district. As a result of the 9th district's creation, Sully, population between the districts required rebalancing in order to guarantee that all of its citizens had equal representation. So the Board of Supervisors selected to move North Springfield and Springfield out of the Springfield district. So the Subsequent 3 redistricting processes saw a similar pattern. The populations grew, precincts were shifted, and we've seen now in 2021 that the same thing that happened in 1991 has taken place. The board has once again moved the eastern border of Springfield District further to the west because there was density growth in the places that we're all familiar with in the eastern part of the county. So as a result, and again, I summarize this up here, West Springfield is partially in Springfield District. Springfield itself, as designated by the census, and North Springfield are not in the Springfield District. And let's see, where was I? The resulting map retained 9 districts. This new map reduces the splitting between the 3. Instead of the new map that was just approved by the board actually consolidates the Springfield areas. Instead of being divided between 3 different districts, the Springfield community itself is now split between Lee and Braddock. So still not wholly consolidated, but it's at least not in 3 different magisterial districts. I tried to address the economic impact here. I don't think I did an exhaustive job, but I tried to, again, address some of these. Unlike the name changes for Lee and Lee Jackson, there aren't any sign changing costs, which I think are expensive undertakings. Residents aren't required to list their magisterial district on postal addresses, businesses or residences. So I don't really see how that's going to impact commercial or economic activity if there's a new district name. And then we actually have a data point to reference. Hunter Mill District was formerly called Centerville District, and it underwent a name change. And to my knowledge, there wasn't any significant impact on economic activity. So yeah, that's I sent this around to everyone. If you want to read my last couple of notes here. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna bring in. So I'm gonna bring in what Janae put together. So we can. I'll try to. Janae, actually, if you have your computer up, if you want to share this document on your screen so that you can drive, I'm happy to hand over. Do you know how to share? You can share your screen right now?
No, but I guess you can teach me.
No.
Sure.
Well, you're on Microsoft Teams. You see, so next to in the top right-hand corner, there's a button. You see the leave button.
The top right-hand corner, that's an X.
So, well, do you see the leave button? The big red button that says leave.
Dismiss.
Let's see.
If there's not a red one, though.
Why don't you just give me the orders and I'll scroll to where you want. Then I'll keep sharing my screen.
Okay. What I did today, when I got that report last night, I immediately went to the History Commissioner's Confederate Name Report to see if the Springfield Farm was in it. And granted, I did not have time for a deep review, but from the cursory review, it doesn't look like it was flagged. So we have no idea if this Henry Dangerfield was a Confederate officer, what he was. But what we do know, because of Paul's good research, is that he did have enslaved people on his farm, and it was quite a large farm. So what I spent my time doing was on looking if that area was called Springfield before he named the farm. And I had been told this for many years by some very well-respected historians, especially Edith Moore Sprouse, 30 years ago, and she said that it was known as Springfield for a long, long time. And so I went, if you could go down to reason number 1. Okay. The reason number 1, it was named, so I have these 2 reasons. It was named after the 18th century first county seat of Fairfax County. It was in a spring field and was called as such, Springfield. And this particular Springfield was actually Tyson's Corner. And then I reference it in the book, Preservation of History in Fairfax County, a report prepared for the Fairfax County History Commission, Fairfax County, Virginia, 2001. But it quotes, and it says, this term, the 18th century name Springfields, was designated for the area. And why was it designated? Was because of the head springs of the Accotink, Wolf Trap, Pemett's, and Scott's Run. So it's possible that he named it after what was the original county seat, because of course it later changed and would go to Fairfax Courthouse. So that was the first argument that I used. And then I have some quotes down here. Can you go to the next page? The second reason is Springfields are a geographic anomaly. It is where springs originate to create streams, rivers, and runs. We have them in abundance throughout Fairfax County, including Fairfax District. For example, the 14-mile long Pohick Creek Basin is actually 32 square miles, with the headwaters or the springs at Rabbit Branch and Sideburn Branch. It all drains eventually into the Potomac River. And the rivers and the names, you have Pohick Creek, you have Rabbit Branch, Sideburn Branch, Middle Run, South Run, Rocky Branch. Now, to help you understand where they're located, what I did was I listed the bridges that go over. So you have Commonwealth Boulevard, there's a bridge. Guinea Road, there's a bridge. Burke Lake Road, there's a bridge. Old King Mill Road, there's a bridge. VA 286, there's a bridge. Pohick Road, there's a bridge. There's a bridge on I-95 over it. Lorton Road, US. And can you keep going down? Yeah. And then Old Colchester Road. Also, under the watershed, I apologize. I have two beagles. Okay. Under the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act to prevent soil erosion and flooding, 6 dams were built between 1970 and 85. This includes Lake Braddock, which impounded the Pohick Creek in Burke, Huntsman Lake impounding the Middle Run in Springfield, Lake Royal, which impounded the Rabbit Creek in Burke above its confluence with the Signbird Creek, where it forms Pohick Creek. Remember, that was where the original spring was, Springhead. Lake Barton impounds a tributary of the Sideburn Branch in Burke. You have Woodglen Lake, which impounds the Sideburn Branch in Fairfax, and then Lake Mercer, the final dam completed, impounding the South Run in Fairfax. And then if you scroll down just a little bit more, I found 2 maps. One actually kind of showing the course of Pohick Creek, and as it comes out, it's the one on the left-hand side. And then the one on the other side is the watershed of the area. And therefore, I'm just suggesting it could have easily been called a geographic description of Springfields, as the county seat was in our history. So those were the two reasons why I say it predated the name of the farm. Because I think if it had been called Dangerfield, or if it had been called Springfield Farm, I think you'd have a really good argument, Paul. But because it wasn't, it's more nuanced than that.
I think that's, I mean, that's a question you and I should investigate, because so he did, Henry Dangerfield did buy the 920 acres, the parcel, and I referenced the actual purchase. We have records of the purchase of that parcel and the second parcel that he put together that became Spring Hill Farm. But that, of course, you know, that he bought that in 18 something.
Yeah.
And that was owned by, if you keep going back, by Lord Fairfax as part of the original land grant. But what we need to, it sounds like what we need to answer is, was Springfield District named after Springfield Farm, or was it just because there were lots of springs in the area? I mean,
well, or named after the county. I was just looking at straightly at him at Dangerfield, and I was thinking, okay, if he knew, you know, did he know this name because Fairfax County had the original county seat there, or was it because of the fields and the land way it was called a Springfield area? And when you start looking at it in those ways, it just doesn't fly that there was a negative historical component about it that needs to be rectified, at least in my opinion.
Tim, did you see your hands up?
Yep. Thank you. My research said that the name Springfield came from the Springfield Post Office,
right,
which was located in present-day Annandale, which was on the present, or it was on the then Springfield Farm. And as the owner of the land of the Springfield Farm in the Annandale geographical area, now where he got that name, I did not hear. And it couldn't, and I saw the thing about Tyson's Corner area, et cetera, which you just made reference. But my research showed that this gentleman had the land. He then sold the land to himself and his other investors in a railroad. And then he took, because he still wanted a farm, and this farm just sort of slowly moved itself south in Fairfax County toward what's today Woodbridge in the Pohick area and Prince William County, because he kept selling land off and making money on it as a land person in the railroad and other businesses that he had. And he would just buy new land to backfill what he had just sold off. But and he took the name because he moved the post office, because he had his wife as the postmistress, and that because the name of the post office, or because the post office named the Springfield Post Office, moved south from Annandale toward the Prince William County line. Every time he got new land, that became the new Springfield Farm, until he ended up in the area of the Shirley Industrial Park. And I think it was called that, where I was told the Franconia Road coming into the I-95 area up there. And then that's when the Springfield Mall, I don't know if that's still around, but that's why that was named there, because that's where the Springfield Post Office was, in that general area and stuff. Looking back over now, as Paul pointed out on the thing, all of that is now not in what was then the Springfield district. And even Pat's Harity report, I think it was, he's got people going over to the Braddock Community Center. He's got people going to the over in Franconia in the Lee district to attend meetings for his constituents with the police people for out of the police district. So they're in West Burke, I think it is, where
Tim,
it's located.
Can I interrupt? Before we get to current, I think current is important because that's part of the argument.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that's
that's fine. Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine. Like the members of the public, as I tried to put in my summary, that say geography is confusing, Springfield isn't in Springfield district, we should rename it. That's part of what you're talking about. That's important, but let's pause on that. What I did want to do is pull up, so what I think this summarized, this was a link that I found, and I think this summarizes well what you're trying to say. So this is put together by someone who he's a historian, educator, and member of the Fairfax County History Commission, and he's a Springfield resident.
It's Jack Heller, and he's passed away.
Unfortunate.
Yes,
so
he was wonderful.
That's one of the links I looked at also.
Yeah, so what he says here is the place we call Springfield today, or he cites directly Henry Dangerfield, and this was the question that I posed earlier, is that we need to determine if Springfield was because of Henry Dangerfield or because of the Springs. He claims it's because of Henry Dangerfield. He additionally says there are at least two, Fairfax County had a share of Springfields, and at least two of them disappeared. And Janae, I think these are the alternative possible naming origins that I think you referenced, but I think this clarifies that Springfield wasn't named after those. So I don't know, this seems pretty conclusive to me that Springfield is named after this gentleman who in 1851, etc. And then the map that I pulled up, that I found, seems to make sense here, because if you look at where the Beltway and 95 meet here in the U.S. Census designated area of Springfield, that's exactly what Mr. Heller talks about, where the intersection between routes 95, 395, and the Beltway is right here. So this is the original. This is where the Springfield farm was, and the namesake of the rest of the district. So, I mean, I think we should decide collectively. I think we're facing two different separate issues with the Springfield name. One is, does it geographically represent per criteria 5? And then separately, are we concerned about the ties to slavery of the Springfield farm? So with that, we'll open up discussion.
I will bring up something, since I knew Jack Heller for many years and I knew Edith Morse-Brous for many years. It's obvious that the two of them were both very important history commissioners, very well respected. They obviously had two different opinions, because that's the one I heard from Edith, and this is the one from Jack. So it's hard sometimes to look back in history and to know, it's not always, unless somebody actually wrote it down. So I just wanted to share that.
Hey, anybody else want to jump in?
This is Tim. I don't have a problem personally with the slave situation in the Springfield farm, which I think was your second point. I do have a problem with it with Springfield, but as we know, the shopping area of Springfield today not being within the district. I do remember that Mr. Harity pointed out all these different things with the Springfield name that were in his district, and every single one of them had a West in front of it. West Springfield High School, the 70% of the kids that attend the high school are from the West Springfield High School or from his district. The police station, what's called the West Springfield Police Station, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that was the concern that I have with regards to the name Springfield in today's geographical situation. I mean, I can vote for also the slave situation, but that's not my main concern. I think my main concern was I don't think that the district today is representative of quote unquote Springfield, which is further to the east and then again, historically, now, again, I wasn't there, Janae, and I totally agree. I don't know the gentleman that you just said has died. I looked at his report or his report or whatever it was that he put together for the Historical Society talking about the history of Springfield. And personally, reading how the farm originally named Springfield, that he named Springfield after he started buying more and more acreage and decided to make a huge ass farm up there, was all predicated around the post office that he got permission to have, that he called Springfield because of his farm in the Annandale area. And then this thing just moved down. So if he had not had the post office, who knows if they would have been able to allow the name Springfield to continue on, because there was not a really government institution there that had the name Springfield other than the gentleman's farm. And there's tons of farms across the county, and there's yet to have the names in the county named after the farm. It's something else that's more important. And in this case, it was the Springfield Post Office.
So I think you would like it to be called West Springfield at the least?
No, I don't think West Springfield. I don't know. I look at, again, I'm not supposed to talk about today's stuff, but Clifton or Burke, or there's other things, historical things within the geographical confines of today's Springfield district that could be representative of. Now, one thing Mr. Harity pointed out in his public comment, and then he repeated 2, maybe 3 times during the town hall in an effort to try to justify who cares about it, leave the name Springfield, because Braddock has the name Braddock and it was just named after a road. And so I went back and researched that, and he's very right. Braddock Road starts over in Lincolnia, intersecting at that point 236. I don't know, I'm sure if it's still called Little River Turnpike over there, and then weaves through the southern part of Fairfax County, culminating over in Sully District at Route 28. And it goes through 3 or 4 different districts. I can't overlay the districts on top of the geographical thing on Google Maps. Yeah. But we have a commentary or footnotes on why Braddock District was named Braddock District back in the early 90s by then the Sharon Bulova is quoted. It's named after Braddock Road. That's why Braddock got its name. Well, and Harity got all bent out of shape about that and stuff. So maybe we rename Braddock District as well. I'm half tempted to put an amendment for us to look at Braddock District under the same office as Springfield District on the geographic thing.
Tim, that's, that if you want to have that discussion, happy to open that up. I do want to keep us focused on.
Let's do Springfield first.
Yeah, let's do one thing at a time here. To that,
I think, yeah.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Okay. So to that, I am sufficiently convinced that Springfield Farm, as a working plantation owned by someone who we documented owned slaves, there is sufficient justification in my mind to amend our original inclusion of the geography concern, which is, I'm looking at the criteria because I had to pull them back up.
Number 4.
To add Springfield to number 4 because of the slave ownership component. Certainly the racism component that accompanies slave ownership, but I don't want to split hairs here. So I don't know.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, I make the motion. Thank you, Tim. Seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
I just want to make sure I get this right. I think I heard one nay. There was more than one. I heard one from Jimmy. There's more than one.
I would say nay.
Okay, it's two.
I would say nay.
Is that Candy?
Yes.
Okay, so
And Jerry, nay.
counting four. Any abstentions? We give Denver a second to do some math and then give us the count. I don't see Denver's phone on any longer. I do see that she's still. Sorry, Nat, Denver seems to be a guest. I don't know if she can unmute herself or not.
So she's on as a presenter.
Okay.
And her mute is off now.
Yeah, Denver, I saw your mic flicker. So the mic is showing as, yeah, we're having the same problems. We can't hear you again.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. We have 13 for and 4 against.
Okay. So I'm going to add criteria number 4 to the Springfield matrix. We're still on this topic. We have about 30 minutes before we adjourn. So if everyone wants, we could take a straw poll now, consistent with what we've done before, or we can keep discussing. Oh, that was loud. Jimmy, go ahead.
Here's how I would explain my nay vote there and why I think that the Springfield district is distinct from, say, the Sully district. I recognize that Janae and I have a little bit of a disagreement on as to the Sully plantation and how long it was owned by Quakers versus not owned by Quakers. But ultimately, the Sully district was named after the Sully plantation. The Sully plantation up until 1839 was a plantation with enslaved individuals and owned by the Lee family, as in Robert E. Lee, as in lots of other Lees. So I think that's distinguishable. Sorry, and a reason to change that name. With Springfield, we have a bunch of competing issues as to where Springfield initially came from. Tim says it's coming from the post office. Paul's got evidence it comes from the Dangerfield farm. Janae's got points that it comes from the term fields, as in spring fields. And I just don't think that it's necessarily clear that Springfield is named after the Springfield plantation. I mean, that's just a different situation, I think. Sully is named after the Sully plantation, the Sully historic site. Springfield, I think the evidence of that is far weaker. As for the geographic confusion on this one, I do not think there's a ton of evidence that the people of Springfield are very confused about where they live. I think if we could do this all over again, we might have named it something different, maybe. But I don't think that right now there's a huge groundswell of belief that the name should be changed.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead. Thanks, Jimmy.
I just wanted to make a slight correction to what Jimmy just said. What he said is correct. What he said about the post office was there. The post office and the farm continuously moved south. Not just the post office, the farm itself, which is, so Janae and yourself are correct in that Springfield was named after the farm, but the farm was named Springfield because it itself moved further south out of the Annandale area. And as he sold land up to the northern side of it and then acquired new land further south in the county to grow his farm down there. So he had continued to have a farm. Hope I didn't confuse anyone.
No, I mean, Tim, I was going to say something similar in that the Springfield, as you know, I quoted that in my part. Springfield District was named after the community that it serves, and that community has always been called Springfield, at least by the U.S. Census. So there is, and in turn, the community was called Springfield because of Springfield Farm. So, I mean, I know that there are competing narratives between, maybe historical narratives between Mr. Heller and Miss Sprout. Sprouse, thank you. But it's pretty clear that, you know, even if there were Springfields in other parts of the county, Springfield District is named after Springfield Community, which is right here, if you can see my shared screen, and that was named after the farm. The farm had slaves. There are a couple layers here, and I admit that it's nuanced, but this is consistent with, well, if the place is named after a working plantation that had humans enslaved, then that's sufficient to put it up for evaluation. I think it rises to the level of necessary condition to rename.
Keep in mind, though, it was not on the Confederate Name Task Force. So all the history commissioners would have reviewed that. Keep in mind, Ann Stuntz was in charge of it, and the book that you used was the book that her parents did. So I just want you to be aware of that.
That's good. Well, if you want to add something into your, I mean, that's great. Yeah, that's okay. Ray.
I'm just telling you that, you know, she was the chair, and the book that you referenced, the Here and Now book, that was what her parents did. And he was also a lifetime history commissioner.
Ray, go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I voted for including Springfield for reason 4 as well, only because of the discussion that shows there may have been a link, but I'm not persuaded that we ought to recommend it as a district that should be renamed. So I probably will be voting not to recommend it. So, but anyway, I think the discussion, Paul, that you provided shows that there's some ambiguity. And I don't think it rises to a level of concern that we should, you know, be prepared to consider that it be renamed.
I'd be happy to try a straw vote myself. I don't know. Put that on the table. Does anybody second that?
We don't need a motion, but I think you're right. I think we're ready for that. So this is a preference canvas by the chair. Yeah, so the motion will be to rename, if you're in favor of renaming Springfield District, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, if you are against recommending to rename Springfield, please say nay.
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 How should we do this? Because we don't have a chat feature. I think we have to do a voice vote.
Is this for consideration of or for absolute?
No, this is just the straw poll. But there's no way for Denver to distinguish between everyone's votes.
Let's just give our names.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go down the list.
What do you mean by this is just the straw poll?
Thank you, Jimmy. I was going to follow up.
So we did straw polls. We did a preference canvas for the Lee, Sully, and Mount Vernon Mason. They're not final votes. It's just to get take the temperature of the room.
Yeah, but we're trying to wrap this up starting next week. So we gotta, at some point we gotta decide, right? Like,
yeah. So per our discussion earlier, we're gonna, Janae and I will probably try to combine our work somehow and come up with the final version. I'm going to circulate that, and then we have to take a final vote on everything. We also have to address the precincts.
Okay.
Is it verified that, because I think this affects a straw poll, is it absolutely verifiable? Is it validated that in fact there is slavery attached to Springfield?
Yeah, I quote.
Just confirming that I
yeah.
understand.
Well,
that's let's see. I'll point out where I found.
So in effect, we are having a straw poll, much like we did for Mount Vernon, in terms of favoring discussion around whether or not Springfield should be renamed because of that. Because there are ways to obviously honor the history too.
No,
but aren't we actually not, like, haven't we just had the discussion as to whether should be renamed or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
Lisa, to your original question,
Page 11, Paul.
Sorry, go ahead.
Page 11 of your draft.
Yeah, he has it up.
Yeah, it's up here. So my contention, I'll repeat it just for the sake of clarity, is that Springfield is named after the community it serves, which is the Springfield community, and that in turn was named after Springfield Farm. Springfield Farm had slaves. So right now the vote is, there's a straw poll. Again, it's not definitive, but it's just to get everyone on the same page so we can all look at the report together. If you are in favor of recommending a name change for Springfield based on criteria 5 and 4 and 5.
Paul?
Yeah, go ahead.
Paul, keep it simple.
But
Are you in favor of?
I think we've had this discussion, and so you're saying, well.
So Lisa's asking the question, I'm just clarifying. So this is a straw poll, and we have to do the voice vote because Denver needs to get numbers.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but Paul, it's a simple question. Are you in favor of us recommending we change the name or not? That's all the straw poll should be questioning right now.
Yeah, that's
like we already, like, with respect to Mount Vernon, is Mount Vernon associated with slavery? Yeah, it is. It was a plantation. There were slaves there. We got it.
That was my point.
We like, you're trying to, I understand, Paul, that you're saying that Springfield is associated with slavery. Yes, we got that. We got that. Now the question is yes or no.
Jimmy,
do we recommend?
Jimmy, I called the straw poll. Lisa had a question. I answered the question, and I'm now going to do the voice vote to get this thing over with. So
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to pull up an old copy of the minutes. Okay, so Denver, we're going to do the straw poll vote here. The question is, do you recommend a name change for Springfield District? Lisa?
No.
Jimmy?
No.
Richard?
Yes.
Brian?
No.
Jerry?
No.
Safe. Safe was near. George.
Yes.
Janae.
No.
Bill.
No.
Sam.
Yes.
Alice.
No.
Andy.
No.
Prashanth.
No.
Coretta.
No.
Tim.
Yes.
Scott. Scott's still on? That's not on. Ray.
No.
Denver.
No.
And mark myself as a I, please.
So a vote of 5 to 12 and the motion failed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to precincts. Do we want to do this now, or we have 14 minutes left? Okay. Should we vote in block for the precincts, or should we address them individually?
How are they organized when you say
Yeah,
block?
I'm gonna pull up an older agenda. Okay. So most of them, I think we determined that Gunston was not an issue, Richard. I remember that being the case.
I think the issue was if no one Mason, then no one Gunston.
Okay. So we're really just talking about these, I should say Lee's corner. Are there any from this list that we can eliminate because I don't know, we found more out about them? Like Graham Greenway, I think, wasn't a concern after all.
Well, I think the issue with Graham, if I recall, the issue with Graham Greenway was that only one of the two names was an issue.
Okay. Are there any on here that shouldn't be on here?
Well, if you're going to go with Confederate, Mosby should be pulled. Marr should be pulled.
Jenny, when you say pulled, you mean renamed?
Yeah, because they're Confederate.
Okay, I'm gonna bold those here just so everyone knows. So Mosby, Stewart.
Stewart, apparently there's a lot more discussion about that because there was a Stewart family that lived there. There's even the Stewart meal. I had quite an interaction, but also Jeb Stewart did drive through there. So they don't know 100%. So that's the answer about Stewart.
But
I appreciated one person who said, I have no idea. So.
Paul, this is Richard. May I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Given the time, it should take a very limited time to have a consultation with the elections office as to what the route was for naming the precinct, which goes beyond our discussion of the last several meetings. The fact that the electoral board chose a name, I think has an impact. So having that discussion with Robbie or with Kate, I think is going to be meaningful. It can be taken care of in the next couple of days, and we can add additional color to the language that I submitted to you and Nate last week.
Okay. Are you volunteering yourself, Richard?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll skip these for now and get some clarity.
Okay, and then I also sent out all that to everybody too, that just gave the history.
I'm not going to pull up now, but Janae, can you remind us all when you sent that email so everyone can
It
find
was at the beginning of the last meeting is when everybody got it.
Yeah. And I did get it, so.
Good. Then you can put it in your stuff. Whatever you,
Yeah.
but
I'm
the,
looking
but
at
the
it,
whole
yeah.
thing with the Stewart name turned out to be a real discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Janae. Thank you, Richard. Candy's your hand up.
No.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday for our final meeting, or hopefully. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
One.